All right, we're back. What's up, guys? How's it going? Mark Freeman 408. We have my father here, Rob Freeman, and we figured we'd go live and fire away, hear about the story of it all. So we got lots of time today, so you guys are gonna learn lots. So yeah, where did it all begin?
So, I sold real estate for a long time, like 15 years, and I kind of look at it, it was like 1 year, 15 times. It's not something I really wanted to do. It's just like, when it was time to get out in the world and make money, I didn't know what to do.
Needed something to do.
Yeah, and my dad said, well, your brother's selling real estate, and my dad sold real estate all his life, and he said, you kind of know the business, and, you'd be really successful at that. And so I went and got my license. I took the courses at the time, and I did well in the courses, and I got my license and got into it. And it took me a few months to really get going, and I did well, but I wasn't really happy.
It's like just a job.
Well, it was a job, and although I did really well with it, it's not what I wanted to do.
Okay.
It's kind of like
your passion.
No, it's kind of like you're doing what you want to do, and you love it and you enjoy it, right?
Exactly. I don't have a boss.
No.
I'm the boss.
Yeah, and I think people should do that. So I always found that when I was out selling real estate, and I was great with people, I looked after them. I made sure that they got what they were looking for, and we took the time and all that. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I guess to make a long story short, I was always looking for something different. And even when I was out showing houses, I would be brainstorming. It's kind of like, okay, come back to the car, right?
Yeah.
And well, I never got that bad that I was off in another world, but I was always just kind of brainstorming, thinking, yeah. And I remember telling a good buddy of mine, Phil, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want something where it's a little bit from a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Right? And of course, in the end, that's what London Telecom was.
Like a subscription plan.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's doing nowadays. Everything's a subscription plan.
Yeah. So, how would I describe how it got started? I actually went out west for a year. I went back to school. Yeah. And because I had taken engineering.
Well,
and
you could start with when you were young.
Well, okay.
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay. So when I was young, we didn't have a lot of toys. This was like in the 50s and, early 60s. And
don't have all the gadgets.
No, we just don't. And I remember my dad got us these phones for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And they were these Remco phones. They were yellow with a dial on them with the big D batteries or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And if you pick up the phone and you turn the dial, it would ring the other phone. So you got these two phones and you got 50 foot of cable wire with it. So, at our house, my brother's room was next door, so we wired it, over the door jamb and down and out and into his room. And this was a big thrill to be able to pick up a phone, dial it, and then he would answer. And we would just chit chat about stuff, right? As brothers do. And that was our fun. And then we had a few other little toys and stuff, but you didn't have a whole lot to keep yourself amused like today's kids with video games.
The iPads and the video games.
Oh, you didn't have any of that, right? So you actually played with other friends. We'd go outside and play hide and go seek. Actually, it was socializing for real.
You had to make your own fun back then.
You did, and it was the kids on your street. There were the older kids and younger kids, and you all played together. And it was hide and go seek. It was skipping with the girls. It was cowboys and Indians, road hockey and soccer.
What's the cops and robbers?
Whatever you could do, right? You had to improvise. And on rainy days, you'd have Monopoly.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
The board games,
The board games.
Now we have a lot more board games, but probably Monopoly and checkers, and those were the big ones.
Yeah, so anyway, we had these phones, and I remember telling a friend at school about them, and he was very excited. He says, oh, I'd really love to see it, because nobody had stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So he got permission from his mom to come home after school, and he came home and we went to use them. They didn't work.
Of course.
And, oh, I know. And I'm thinking, oh my God, my friends come all the way to my place to see these, and they're not working. It's like, I got to go into crisis mode here.
Full of shit.
Emergency mode, right?
Yeah.
So I took them out to my mom. She was making dinner in the kitchen. I says, Mom, you got to fix some of my friends here to play with these with me, and they're not working. And she says, oh gosh, Rob, I wouldn't know how to fix that. Maybe if you wait till your dad gets home then he can fix it. And I said, no, my friend's got to go. So we're in the middle of an emergency here, right? So she reaches into the drawer and grabs a screwdriver and hands it to me. And she says, see if you can fix them yourself.
Good luck.
Yeah, just open them up. And I was really intimidated by this, but I thought, well, here goes nothing. And I opened up the phone, and when I looked, one of the wires had come off. And I just had to tighten up the screw, put the wire back, and tighten it up. And my God, they worked. So I was so excited that I actually fixed something, right?
First thing you've ever fixed.
It really was. And I didn't have to take it to my dad for him to fix. It was like I actually fixed it myself. And I was only like, 7 or 8 or something like that. So anyway, my dad recognized that I was interested in this stuff. And he actually, the Christmas that was coming up after that, they were closing out this old phone exchange in the town of Inwood near Sarnia. And it was the old grandfather phones, with the crank and the earpiece and the big snout on the bells, yeah. And you just turn
Most people would probably never know what those are.
They'd have to search.
You have to Google it. Yeah.
Google, old original phones, right?
Yeah.
And where you had to ring the operator, and then she would connect you through to whoever you wanted to talk to. So he got me these old phones, and I was so excited to have these. And I wired them up in the house and to the den and all of that. And then I think it was the next Christmas, he actually got me a switchboard. They were selling all this old stuff as they were converting to dial phones in Inwood, upgrading, right? And that's great. And he got me the switchboard, and I was so excited to receive that because, there were all these wires and relays and cords you could plug in. And he got me some more of these crank phones. And so what did I do? I wired up the kids on the street, my friends. And we got permission from the neighbors. Yeah, I remember their name. It was Vetters.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Vetter. And I asked my dad, do you think she would let me bury a cable along her garden? And he says, you gotta go ask. So I remember knocking on the door, and I was just shaking, right? Just nervous. And I asked, and I couldn't believe it. She says, sure. She says, as long as you don't, dig up my tulips and my daffodils, no problem. Yeah. And she went out with me, and she said, just go along the fence line. I couldn't believe it. And my next friend was on the other house, right next door to theirs.
Oh, okay.
So we buried the cables, and we even put up signs, buried cable, do not dig.
Don't dig.
Just like for real, right?
Yeah.
And it was great because when my friends wanted to talk to another friend, they would ring the phone, and then I would connect to the other.
So you had to be home.
Yeah. If I wasn't home, my mom would do it. I showed her how to do it.
Jeez.
So when a call came in on the switchboard, how to connect to the other friend, right?
So doesn't a little metal thing fall down?
Yep. Yeah. So when they
just take a cord
exactly
plug it in.
Yeah, and it would kind of buzz or something. There were batteries, the big batteries that went with the switchboard. So that was interesting. I had all that stuff, and my dad saw that I had that interest. So one day he came to me and he says, I have a friend who's the manager of the phone company in Sarnia.
All the connections.
Graydon Baines. And they actually just lived one street over. And they used to come to our place for little parties, and we'd go to their place and everything. And he said, my dad said to me, how'd you like to learn how the entire phone system works?
Sure.
And I thought, wow, fantastic. We didn't have the internet. Yeah. And this stuff you couldn't find in books in the library. This was kind of like proprietary stuff, right?
You had to know someone.
Yeah. And so, we went on a Saturday morning, and the manager was there, and we met, the technical guy, the technician. He spent the whole morning, and he took me through the whole thing, like when you picked up a dial phone, what happened, and as you dialed each number, there were these, it's a step-by-step system. So when you pick it up, the relay just kind of goes up and gets ready. And the first digit you dial, it kind of goes, and it goes up by the numbers that you dialed. Oh, okay. So our phone number at that time was 542-5202. That's about the only number I can remember of anything these days, right?
Yeah, I don't remember any numbers now.
No,
I think I remember 2.
Yeah.
Yours and mine.
Well, when I was in real estate, there was no internet and there were no cell phones, but I remembered every phone number in my head. I had all my clients' numbers memorized, so wherever I was, I could just dial it.
In school, I could remember probably 10 or 15 numbers.
But not now.
But
right?
now it's like no.
Just look it up.
Yeah.
Our brains are
I
lazy.
just click on the name on my phone. It's easier.
Yeah, I know. So when you pick up the phone, like I say, it gets ready, and it's the size of like this, and it's like got all these relays and things. It's electromechanical. And if you dialed 5, and when you let it go, you hear tit-tit-tit-tit, and it's breaking the connection each time.
Okay.
And that's the signal it gives for these relays. So when you break the connection, it's like a stepper switch, and it's got like a, I don't know how you'd say, but it goes up and then it sits there and goes up. It's kind of like the number of times that are in the number of breaks, it goes up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the next time when you dial 4, it goes over 1, 2, 3, 4. And then that connects to another one, which does the same thing for the next digits. And then, so he walked me through this from the very first time you pick up the phone and you start dialing to when it completes the call and rings the phone at the other end.
Wow.
And it's this big room, and I mean, they don't even have these anymore, right? These are,
Everything's on.
everything's
in the
all
cloud.
computerized
Yeah.
now. Whether you dial or whether it's push button, it's all computerized. But it's this big room, and it's very loud, all the sounds, because it's this chattering of these
Everyone calling.
everybody in the city calling.
Was it hot in there?
Just normal temperature.
Oh, okay.
They didn't have to air condition because it's just electromagnetic relays. That's all it is. There's no computers at that time, right? And so I found that very interesting. And then my dad also knew the fellow who was the manager of the Forest Phone Company. That was an independent phone company, People's Independent Phone Company, they called it, or something. And some of these different exchanges, they worked out with Bell Canada and so on. They're kind of like long distance offices as well.
Yep.
Okay, so that one was the long distance office for our area. So he says, how'd you like to learn how the long distance phone system works? So I said, great. And we went there on a Saturday, and he told me all about trunk lines and all this stuff, and he showed how connections were made when you made a long distance phone call. Because they had, when we had our dial service, if you made a long distance call back in the early 60s, you had to go through the operator. You dialed 0, and then the operator placed your long distance call. Yeah. And she took your number and you were billed, but then they switched to what they called DDD, direct distance dialing. And when you dialed 1, that puts you into this long distance network automatically.
So that's where the 1 came from.
That's where the 1 came from. That's the indicator to them that you were making a long distance call. But I learned how that whole system worked.
Was there area codes back then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the very first numbers were names. Like our exchange was called Kingswood 2. Because K is 5 and I is 4, I believe, on the thing. I think it was Kingswood 2 exchange. So it was there was the Kingswood exchange, and it could be Kingswood 2, Kingswood 4, Kingswood 8, whatever. But it was the Kingswood exchange, right? And then downtown they had the Edgewater exchange because it was next to the river. So, but it was like 344 and 342 and all that. And, and they had the area codes, and since then they've divided up into way more area codes. Right?
There's so many.
Especially when fax machines came in and all this demand for other numbers. So anyway, fast forward to university. I didn't know what to take. I was always good at electronic stuff and phones, and so I got into engineering, electrical engineering. And boy, did I ever have an awakening on that. It was, oh man, like the mathematics.
Insane.
And first year I think was 1,500 or 2,000 students. Second year was like 400. And they basically screen you on the math. And it was brutal. Like, I didn't even know they had such stuff.
They filter you out right away.
Oh, no kidding. Like, they get your money for the first year. Right? And they get all these students. Pardon me. And then in second year is when people really buckled down. And so I had to repeat my first year twice.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. It was a combination of how hard it was and all the partying we did. You know, it was kind of at a time
It's
when
tough to balance both.
well, and they still do that today.
Yeah, yeah.
First year kids, they're there to have fun.
They just filter them all out.
Well, and you know, especially if you go to a university that's away from your hometown.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like you're getting out of your house.
Because then you're living with the party.
Well, yeah, and you know the rules of your parents, and you kind
Yeah.
of put your hair down and you just have fun. And
You're your own person.
I'm sure everybody that's watching this
Yeah.
knows all about that.
Everyone's been through college and university and
But
partied.
the thing is, if you want to get a career going, you do have to buckle down.
You do got to do the work,
You got to do the work, right?
or just waste your money going to university.
Yeah, and you know, and my dad was paying for it, and I felt bad that I had to do a second year, but I did, and he never really said too much, and I got through my second year, and then into the second, or my first year, and then I got into the second year, and it was so hard. And I remember, Mark, just staring at my textbooks, and it just would not.
It's like a different language.
But it wouldn't go into my head.
Yeah.
It's like, and I called my buddy up, and I said, I don't know what to do. My dad's gonna be so mad if I tell him I'm gonna leave, and I gotta get through this. And he says, well, you might be surprised. Why don't you be honest and call him and say that this is just not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I, once again, just like going up to the door, my neighbor, I was shaking, right?
Yeah.
To make the phone call
Yeah.
to my dad. And I thought he was going to yell at me and scream
Rip you
and, you know,
apart.
I've paid for you and you're wasting
Yeah,
all this
2
money.
years,
Yeah. And now 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
And I had actually was in co-op, so I was doing co-op jobs. And I actually enjoyed the co-op jobs way more than I enjoyed the school. And for my first year co-op, I was at Northern Telecom, again, associated with phones, right? And then I also had a job up north in the mines. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, you're in Sudbury.
Sudbury, yeah. And we got to go down in the mines and fix the phone system that they had. So everywhere was with phones, it seemed, right? And these were jobs they gave you. Like you didn't even get to pick what job you wanted. You were issued a job.
Oh, okay.
So it was interesting how coincidentally, I always got a job with phones, right?
Maybe they knew you were good at
I
phones.
don't know. But so I was at Northern Telecom, Northern Electric, and they changed the name to Northern Telecom, and then that was, you know, that company went out of business. It was the company that made all the phones for Bell Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was owned by Bell Canada, I believe. And then I also got a job installing the old style mobile phones in the cars.
Scratching up a few cars.
Oh, I did. I'll tell you the story of that one. It was Challenge Communications.
Yeah.
Shelley Kadeko was the guy's name. I don't even know if he's alive today in Toronto. And they were 25-watt phones, and you had this big box in the
You
trunk.
cook your lunch on that.
Oh yeah. And the antenna was either on the roof, a little short antenna, or a bigger antenna on the back, you know. And they warned me when I first started working there. They said, if anybody's keying the phone to test it, don't touch the antenna. So what was the first thing everybody does?
Touch the
Touch the antenna. And you literally burn your finger.
Really?
Oh yeah, you'll burn it. Like there's
Just 'cause it's
25
so
watts.
hot?
It's radiation, and it's like
Oh,
it's radio frequency radiation,
Yeah.
right? And so you touch it, and it's all concentrated on that antenna. And if you key it and touch it, you'll burn yourself. So you know, every tech tried it.
Had to do it once.
Yeah, you know, you shouldn't tell somebody not to do something, right?
Yeah. Don't press the red button.
Yeah.
I'm pressing it.
I know, but anyway, so I dove into that, and it was installing phones in cars, and we had to take them, we had to road test them, make sure they worked out on the highway, right?
And they're obviously all nice cars.
Oh, you know, it was only
yeah,
you know,
people that could afford the
could
phones.
afford, or business people
Yeah.
gave their salesman a phone, right? So it was one of the two things. It was either you worked for a company as a salesperson and you needed a phone to help you with sales, or you were a person who had lots of money and it was like a doctor, lawyer, somebody, and it was more of a status thing in some ways, right? That you had a mobile
Just had
phone.
to have one.
Yeah, because at the time they were $2,000,
Oh, jeez.
and that was in the 70s.
That's a lot of money back
So
then.
what would that be worth today? $5,000,
$5,000.
$8,000,
Yeah.
you know? Anyway, so this one time there was a Jaguar. And I remember the time the Jaguar was over $100,000. And
Back then.
yeah, back then. And
Oh,
it was a 12-cylinder.
Yeah.
And I remember the
Just a
manager at the you know, the back garage there, the installation, he reminded me how expensive this car was. Would have been better if he didn't tell me. Right?
Yeah.
And I was kind of nervous, and he says, and you're going to install the phone today. And I'd only been there for like a week or two.
Oh, jeez.
I had just learned how to pull carpets out and run the wires to the back. and he taught me how to put the antenna on. You took a little, like the little, what is the punch?
Yeah.
The little, it's got like a little pin.
Yeah, basically.
Like
a
center punch.
Yeah, center punch.
And you hit it to make a little dimple. And then you go harder, and then you've got a nice little spot that you can start with a small drill, and then a bigger one. And then you put the antenna on, right? The problem with this car is there was a little ridge.
Oh,
so you got to be real careful on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And with your dimple and your drill and everything. And then on that one, you have to do a double spacer with the little rubber thing for the antenna to actually be snug because it's a little ridge. So I did my dimple, and I was just sweating bullets because I thought, this is a $100,000 car, and I'm doing it.
And I'm back then.
Oh, I know.
So it'd be what now?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what they cost these days.
Yeah.
So I did the dimple, and then I got the small drill, and I put it in the little dimple, and I pressed, and I went zzz, and then it went like this. Oh my God. Oh, I felt my face go red. And I could feel the sweat under my arms.
Yeah, I get all
and I thought I just destroyed a $100,000 car. And I was just, oh my God, I thought I'm gonna be fired.
That's silly.
So I went into the guy that was our manager, who's in charge of all our stuff back there. I mean, he installed stuff, but he was kind of our manager in charge as well, right? Yeah. He was the boss. And I says, I'm so sorry. I said, I thought I was doing it right, and I pressed the drill, and it just went zzz all over the trunk. And without even skipping a beat, he says, not to worry, Rob. He says, I've got the magic compound. He reaches into his drawer and has this buffing compound. And he got the machine and the buffer, and he buffed it out. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Jeez.
So I guess I hadn't pressed that hard. Just kind of scratched the surface.
You've probably done it before too.
He did. He admitted to me after, and he says everybody's done it. So anyway, but then I thought, I'm done with this car, and he said, no, continue.
You finish it.
I thought, oh no, why is he asking me to do that? So I had to then punch it a little harder. I had to make a deeper dimple. And then I could use the drill, and then I did everything proper. You know, you go with the higher sizes, and so you get a nice hole, and then you put the cable through, and you put the antenna on, and you test it and everything. And then we had to test drive it on the highway. And so he wanted to come with me. Yeah. Because he wanted to drive the Jag.
That's hilarious.
And then he let me drive it, and he says, let her go, Rob. And we were on the 400, right? Yeah. And at that time, I think it's still 100 kilometers an hour is the speed limit. And I swear we took it up to 160 or 180, right? And we went maybe a little bit longer than we should have, a little bit further, testing the phone.
A few extra kilometers.
And when the guy came that afternoon to pick it up, he wasn't too happy because there was like 40 or 50 kilometers on the car. Yeah. And there should have only been about an extra 5 kilometers. Go on the highway and test it and come back.
Went for a little tour.
So, I think the story is that we were having a few issues with the phone, and we had to, go out for a little bit. But, those are all the stories that really happen, right? Yeah. Anyway, so coming back to school, I actually enjoyed my co-op work programs, the different jobs I had. I really enjoyed that. Just not the school. I really enjoyed the people I met. They were great. I enjoyed the work I did. We had fun. You'd go out with the gang and, for lunches and dinners and then the weekends. I mean, I enjoyed it. I really did. But coming back to school, and I said to my buddy, I can't go any further. This stuff will not go into my head, right? And I didn't know what to do. He says, we could get a tutor. And I thought, no, it didn't mean anything to me. Like, I'm the type of guy, if I'm going to learn something, I have to be able to apply it to something, and then I can learn it. If I have a goal and something I want to do, I have no problem learning what I got to learn to do that. But if I don't have a goal or a real reason, it won't go into my head. So he says, call your dad. And I says, oh, I can't. He's going to scream at me. You do it. He said, no, you do it. And I picked up the phone. Dad? Yes. Can't do it. I said, I got to tell you something. And he says, you want to leave school? he kind of knew.
Yeah.
You know, parents kind of know, right?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And I thought I was in for a fight. And he says, well, you know, I was wondering when you were going to call me because it just wasn't working out. Right?
Yeah.
And he said, that's okay. He says, come on home, you know, pack your stuff and we'll see about, you know, what we can get you involved with. And I remember taking a correspondence course on business, and I did very well on it. And I took some courses like at the community college, Fanshawe, like evening courses and stuff. And that's when I got involved in real estate and stuff. And, you know, fast forward in the real estate, once again, I did well. And I even was salesman of the year at my office and got all these gold rings with diamonds and all this crap, right?
All the awards.
But it just wasn't for me. That was the way I looked at it. That's what my dad did. And that's what my brother did.
It wasn't.
But it's not what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
right? You got to find what you want to do.
Didn't want to follow in the footsteps.
No. I mean, you know, it was great that he got me going there and he helped me out, but I want to do something else. So I went to, you know, later in life, like I did real estate for like 15 years or whatever. And I thought, I'll go back to school. I'll finish off my degree, right? Only I don't want to take engineering this time. What am I interested in? Well, you know, I had done the hot air ballooning, and I was always interested in weather and all that. So I thought, I know all about weather and all that. I'll take meteorology, right? And that I'll be able to learn and understand and get a job, and that'll be fun for me because I enjoy that stuff also, right? So once again, I go into school, and guess what? The math.
The math is back.
The math was back, and it's all mathematics.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing about weather systems and how all this works, and it's all friggin' mathematics.
No one likes math.
And the same thing was happening. I was looking at it and I thought, what is this? This is even worse than the first time. So I went to my prof and he says, you know, we realize you're older. And he said, if you just try, he says, we'll kind of
push it through.
Yeah. He was saying it in a way that wouldn't get him in trouble.
Yeah.
He says, just do your best. And, you know, come and see me and do your best. And it's kind of like, well, yeah. It's kind of like if you try.
Yeah.
If we can see you're trying, we're going to kind of just give you a little kick in the butt and, you know, get you through. That's what they do for mature students.
Yeah.
Right? And so I tried, and I appreciated that he did that. But once again, and he says, we can get you a tutor. And I got a tutor, and I couldn't do it, Mark. So then I went, well, now what do I do? I've sold all my stuff. I'm in my 30s.
Burn all the money.
Now what do I do?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm going west. Went to Victoria, BC.
Everyone goes west.
Yeah, and I enrolled in college, Camuson College in Victoria, BC. Electrical stuff, electrical technology. I thought, I'm good at all that kind of stuff, right?
Is there math?
There's not much math. It's all practical.
Yeah.
It's working with all the actual real stuff.
It's all hands-on.
It's all hands-on. And, you know, I got almost 100% in it. And I did the labs and I got 100%, and they were so impressed they asked me would I be a tutor for the other students, and they would pay me.
Perfect.
I thought, great, I love doing this, and I can teach it and I can get paid also. So I did this for however a number of months it was, and I was, you know, tutoring all the other guys that didn't know their butt from their elbow with this stuff like I was in math. Yeah. Right? I was showing them and they were doing well, and that was great. And a year had gone by, and I thought, you know, this isn't for me. They gave me a job, because it was a co-op course as well. They gave me a job wiring up homes, because I had learned all about that, learned the code, learned how to do it with all the labs. And I was doing it, but I didn't like it. I thought,
no passion.
I mean, I didn't want to be pulling my wire all my life, pulling a wire all my life, right? But I did well wiring up the houses and all that, but I just thought this isn't for me. And so I came back, and I didn't have anything, right? And no money, no nothing.
Did you graduate?
Well, I finished that course. Yeah. I got almost perfect in it, but I didn't, you know. And I was working, and I had a job, but I left. I came back, and that's, you know, when I met your mom. You know, I remember telling my brother, he says, what do you want to do? And I says, well, I want to, meet a girl, get married, settle down, have kids. And he says, who would want you? You don't have a job, you're down on your luck. Yeah. I said, that's not true. I mean, I was upbeat, right? And so maybe you might not know this part of the story, but I had, seen this girl, Lynn, before I went out west. And so that night when I got home, I called her up, and we had kept in touch when I was out west, and she was now with a new guy, but she, we kept in touch, and she says, well, come on over, let's have dinner. Well, we get caught up on everything, right? So we had a nice catch up on everything, and as I was leaving, I don't think you know this story. As I was leaving, she asked me what we want to do, and I said, well, I want to meet a girl, I want to settle down, because I was now, 30, how old would I be? About 34, 35. Oh, okay. And by that time, you got to get your shit together, right? Yeah. You got to get your shit together.
No more dinking around.
Yeah, no more screwing around. So we had the Penny Saver. It's like this newspaper where it's buy and sell. It's like Kijiji today. Yep. Only it's a newspaper. It's a sub part of the London Free Press. And the year before that I'd gone out there, I was selling real estates, and I used to take my ads into the Penny Saver, right? And for houses and stuff, because I had my own brokership actually, but I just didn't want to do real estate. But anyway, she, as we went out the door, I noticed the Penny Saver had arrived in her mailbox there, and I said, Lynn, your Penny Saver arrived. And she says, oh, well, let's see. Let's look in the personals. We got to get you somebody. We got to get you, look in the personals. So we went back in her house, opened up the Penny Saver to the personals page. Many people today may not even know what that is, but it's where you can put personal ads, looking for a guy or a girl or whatever, right? Like dating.
It's like the dating app.
It is. It really is. That's how people met people. Yeah. You place an ad, and then people respond, and you go out for lunch and see if you click, right? So I open it up, and she says, check out the personals. And there was 15 or 20 ads, and I go through, and right there it says, Rob F., are you back yet? A cute redhead wants to know.
That's hilarious.
And I said, Lynn, look, this is for me. She said, oh, don't be silly, Rob. I says, no, I feel it. This is for me. And she said, well, why don't you write back? And she says, I'll drive you to the Penny Saver. You can do a reply. So.
Oh, you had to reply in the paper?
Yeah. So I wrote her up. There's a box number, right? So I did a reply, did a nice letter in reply, and she drove me down, and I put it in the box at the Penny Saver. The next day, I get a call. And she says, hi, Rob, it's Carla. Remember me? Oh my God, I had to do some fancy footwork. Who's Carla? And I thought if she talks long enough, there'll be a clue, right? And I got to kind of do some, pedaling pretty fast here and treading water, right? Until a clue comes. But I did. And it turned out that she was the girl who took my ads. When I sold real estate, that she would, every week when I took my ads in for the houses, she would come up from the back and take my ads and take the check and everything, right, for the ads. And it would always be her. Well, little beknownst to me was, it wasn't even her department. She was interested in me the year before, before I left to go out west. Yeah. And she told her buddies there, or told her colleagues at the Penny Saver, I'm going to marry that guy. And I had no clue. It was just this nice girl that would, serve me, that would take my ads, and then I would leave. And I had no clue. I had no clue. Jeez. And so when the rest of the story to that, Mark, is that I had cats, and I wanted to get rid of my 2 cats, but I wanted them to go to a nice house because they were my pets. So I put an ad in the Penny Saver. So just before I went out west, that was my last ad. I gave her the ads, and she says, well, why are you giving your cats away? I says, well, I'm moving out west for 5 years. Right? Yeah. Well, she got disappointed because she thought, oh, Rob's gone, even though she told her friends she's going to marry me, he's gone now for 5 years. So she went and married another guy. Okay? Well, fast forward, to when I was out west, and I made the decision to come back home on that Wednesday. Okay, you haven't heard this story.
Yeah.
You've never heard the story. This is live.
This is live.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've heard it.
It's the first time because I've never told it to you guys. But anyway, on the Wednesday, where I decided I was going to come home, that I'd had enough being out west, and I got my plane ticket to go home on Saturday. On that same Wednesday, your mom had had enough of her husband and moved out.
Jeez.
Okay?
Yeah.
So she moved to Darla's.
Okay.
You know Darla, right? She moved to Darla's place. And on that Wednesday, she placed an ad in the paper she worked, seeing if I was home yet.
That's funny.
Okay, this is a true story. This is
What a
fate work.
coincidence.
This is how fate works. She placed the ad on the Wednesday, came out on the Saturday. I got home on the Saturday, had dinner with my old friend Lynn, who's now seeing somebody else, and we just met for dinner and grabbed the penny saver on the way out, go back in the house. She wants to find me somebody. We open it up. I see it. I say, this is for me. She doubts it, but she says, let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
She drives me to the penny saver. I put my ad in. The next day I get a call from your mom.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob, this is Carla. Do you remember me? And I had to fake it till I made it, right? Fake it till you make it. Bottom line was, I think the next day we went to dinner and a movie, and we clicked. We clicked. Found a connection, and we dated for a bit. We moved in together, and it really wasn't that long before your brother was conceived.
Yeah.
And then we bought a place, and boom, 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 boom. Now, fast forward here, because when we were at one of the rental places, that is where I had the idea for London Telecom. Okay. And literally, London Telecom, the idea was conceived, I think, literally the same day your brother was conceived. Okay.
It all came together.
It all came together at the same time, because I remember I was home and I had this urge to go out and get the map of Ontario out of the car. And I thought, why? I don't know. I just had this really strong sensation that is speaking to me somehow, right? I went out to the car, I got the map, I went back in, laid it out on the kitchen table, and I started drawing circles around towns. And I thought, what's this all about? Why do I feel compelled to do this? I don't know. And I thought, well, I know that this has something to do with phones. It was kind of coming to me, right? Something to do with phones. I thought, okay, who can call who locally, right? So I draw a circle around London, and I went into the phone book, and it lists who you can call locally.
Okay.
It says London can call all these following places locally. And then it lists all the other towns around who they can call locally. So I did a circle around London, and I drew a line, okay, they can call locally out to Mount Bridges, to Belmont, to Lucan, to all these towns. And I thought, okay, who can they call locally? So the circle continued on. So I've got a circle on London with lines like a spider to these other circles, and now I continued on. Belmont could call St. Thomas locally, right? Lucan could call Exeter locally.
But London couldn't call Exeter.
No.
Oh, wow.
And London could call Mount Bridges locally. Mount Bridges could call Strathroy, but Strathroy and London were long distance. All these other places were long distance at 35 cents a minute.
Oof.
Highway
And that's
robbery.
a lot back then.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right? So then I thought, well, how do I go further? I thought, I'll bet you if you connect all this together, you can call right across Ontario for free. So to test my hypothesis, I went to the library and I pulled out all the phone books for Ontario. I had them all spread out on this one table, and I had my map, and I made a whole map of Ontario. And literally, you could jump from one town to the next and make a call all the way across Ontario.
That's a lot of switches, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought, is there a business here? Is there a way to make some money here?
Yeah.
So I then went to the phone company and I showed them this. And I says, could people make calls locally somehow? And they said, well, they said you could set up a sharing group, and you could run it. They were telling me this, and you could organize this thing, and there's no competition, But you could set up a sharing group and you could be the administrator. And everybody'd have to sign this liability agreement that if you didn't pay the bill for all this stuff with Bell, we can come to you. Or we could come to any one of these members of your group. So I thought, well, that's not going to work unless I figure out a way. So what I did, Mark, was I met John Smith. Okay, he had a company that sold phones and answering machines and stuff like that, right? And alarm systems, right? It was Smithston Phone Center in Chatham.
Oh, good.
So I went and saw him because he had these, what they called line extenders. They were made by Philips, and all you did was I went out to Mount Bridges and I rented 2 phone lines from Bell and installed them in a garage. So I installed this line extender there, and it hooked up to one of the Mount Bridges phone lines.
Okay.
So if you're in London and you called that number, it would answer with that machine. And then on the other part of the machine, another phone line was plugged in also from Mount Bridges, and you got the dial tone.
Oh.
So now guess what you can do? You
can
can call Strathroy. So I call into that number in Mount Bridges, it answers with connecting you to the second line. So you hear the dial tone and then you just punch the buttons, and because you're pressing the tones, that line can hear it, and then it dials to Strathroy.
Oh, okay.
Or a Strathroy number, they could call into Mount Bridges because they're local, and they get dial tone from the Mount Bridges number, and they can call London. Okay, interesting. So there's business here or something, because they can save 35 cents a minute. And there's a lot of people in Strathroy who work in London who are salespeople that need to make phone calls to London numbers.
Back and forth,
Yeah. So fast forward, what I did was I got that liability agreement, but first, before I did that, I thought, how many lines would you need? In other words, hang on, Mark, somebody's calling me. Oh, I'll send that to voicemail. I don't need to take that call. So I thought we could have a sharing service here where people could share this, right? And then they pay me a monthly fee, and I'm the administrator, and I get to make money from this. So I did 2 things. I thought, okay, I get the 2 lines, and I'm going to give people free service and let them test it, and they got to keep track of how often they get a busy signal.
Oh,
Okay. I couldn't research this on the internet. There was no internet.
There was no internet.
No
Google back then.
I had to do my own research.
Yeah.
So I determined that you could have 10 people using a so-called party line before you'd run into trouble bumping into each other. Because if you make a call, and generally a business call, I determined the average business call is like 3 minutes. You know, you get in, you do your thing, you get away. So and people.
So it's basically $1 if you're. Paying
It's
long
$1.
distance.
Yeah, it is. It is $1 a call. And I determined that, you know, these people that want to make these calls, okay, if you have a dedicated system, how much are they on the phone? Well, they're not really on the phone that much in a whole day. Like if you've got so many hours and so many minutes on these lines, each person only takes up a little bit of that, and it's 10 people. You can have 10 people using a party line or a system like this before they run into trouble where they go to call and it's busy, right? So the contention rate was 10 to 1. So I added more lines, and then I started going to people, and I asked them, I said, you know, and I went door to door, and I said, you know, I've got this system. What do you think of it if it was like $15 a month? Oh, I love it. Because my phone bill is like $150 or $200 calling into London. I call my sister, I call my mom, I call my brother. And I said, okay, we're going to start out, and it's going to be free because I want you to keep track. And I did more research, and yes, it turned out to be 10 to 1, and I got more lines, and I did rollover. So it was one number you called, and if the one line was busy, it just rolled to the next, and a second machine, a third.
Oh, okay.
So I had these lines, right?
Yeah.
Right, all the way down, rollover lines, and I charged each person $15 a month, and I made them sign. Now, they said to me, am I liable if you don't pay for this? And I said, yes. Well, then I'm not interested in being involved. You know, you're paying $35 per line per month to Bell, and if you don't pay, I gotta pay. That's what this says here, basically. So I have to think on my feet pretty fast, right? Just like when your mom called. And so I thought, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to prepay the phone bill for 3 months in advance.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was like for these lines, and I'm going to send it out to everybody. I'm going to show a copy of the phone bill paid with a credit on it. And I said, if you saw that, would you be concerned that I'm not paying the bill? They said, no. As long as they see that it's always prepaid 3 months in advance, what's the problem?
Mm.
There's no liability. And they say if I start seeing that you're not paying it and the credit is going down, now I'll get worried. I just cancel.
Yep.
So I always kept 3 months payment in advance on these phone lines, and we got up to 10, and I had 100 people out in Strathroy. I set it up in Lucan for Exeter, and I had another 100 people there, and I set it up in Belmont for St. Thomas and had another 100 people there. So I had 300 people using this.
Connected all these
Times
little towns.
$15 a month.
Yeah.
And I took you're able to take a reasonable administration fee before they will consider it a business, right?
Okay.
Because it's a sharing group. And so I had 300 or 300 members, I guess you'd call them. And I was paying the bill every month, and it was great. It's a great system, right? During this time period, they were doing talks at the CRTC about competition for Bell. They wanted to bring in competition in Canada, and I was
Because it was just Bell.
Yeah, it was Bell in Ontario, and it was it was TELUS out west, and it was
okay.
BC Tel in British Columbia and other places like that. Bell was Ontario and Quebec, mainly the Northwest Territories, right?
Gotcha.
And they had the monopoly. And so to make a long story short, I kept in touch with all the hearings that were happening at the CRTC, Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission. And so I had my ear right to the ground on when competition was going to be allowed, right? And so I knew it was coming, and I thought, I've got to morph this system into something where it can be a real business now, right? So I thought, where would I set up? Where in the heck in Canada would I set up first? Where do I start first, right? And I had written to the CRTC or called them, and I had asked for the documents on these hearings and stuff, and I'd asked for specific documents, and they'd send them to you so you can understand what's going on. And as a Canadian, you get to throw your 2 cents in also and make your voice heard. We're all Canadians, this is our country. And so I knew competition was about to come in, and they had just announced that yes, now there's competition. And literally about the same day, I get this delivery to the condo on Commissioner's Road there, right?
Yeah.
And it's this tube of stuff, and on the outside it says for confidential 5th level Bell Canada managers only. And I thought, but this is from the CRTC. Am I supposed to open this? Is this top secret? Is this for me? Had my name on it. So I open it up. Well, first thing I did was close the curtains. I didn't want anybody
Turn
looking
lights down.
Yeah. I almost thought it was a setup
Yeah.
from Bell, because I had my sharing groups, and they didn't really like that, although it was all legal. They didn't really like that. I actually had a visit a few weeks earlier from a top guy at Bell Canada investigating this,
Oh, wow.
because they thought I was doing something wrong. And I wasn't.
Yeah.
So then I thought this was a setup, that they were trying to nail me for industrial espionage or something, and you get rid of me, right?
Yeah.
So I opened this up, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was a document that was for the top people at CRTC that outlined Bell Canada's business in Ontario and Quebec.
The whole game plan.
It broke it down by exchange, city and exchange, the revenue flow for long distance for everywhere in Ontario.
Yeah.
And I looked at this stuff, and my heart's pounding. I could feel my face was red. I could feel I was sweating. And I thought, this is industrial espionage.
This is not
I know where they're making all their money in Ontario, all their revenue. And so I quickly looked through it, and I thought, should I even be looking at this? But I did.
Your name was on it.
My name was on it, and it showed that the highest revenue was the Hamilton to Toronto corridor. It was millions per month.
Jeez.
And I thought, there's my answer.
There's your spot.
I had literally put it out to the universe 2 weeks earlier. Where should I set up? Where the heck in Ontario should I
That
set up?
randomly arrives.
And it randomly arrived. My answer came. Hamilton to Toronto area. That's
Wow.
their biggest money maker in all of Canada. Right there. You got this huge population. Like, you know, the Hamilton area is, I don't know, several 100,000, if not close to 1 million now, calling right next door to 4 or 5 million people. The amount of money for
Just
long
back and
distance
forth.
is huge, right?
Yeah.
So,
So that was
my
long
answer.
distance?
Long distance.
Oh, okay.
So I got my answer, and I quickly thought, you know, do I take pictures of this stuff? No, don't do that. If this is a setup, you're going to get caught red-handed. You'll go to jail for this.
Yeah.
This is industrial espionage. And I thought, well, I've recorded it in my brain. I've seen it. So I rolled it back up, and I called the CRTC, and I said, I'm sorry, I think I've received something in error. And she said, what does it say? And I said 5th level Bell Canada manager's office. She says, oh my God, you can't have that. She says,
My name's on it.
She said, yeah. She says, one moment, I'm going to call a UPS and get the guy back there immediately to pick that up. So she came back on the line. She says, I've reached them. They're going to be back in 5 minutes to receive that. And she says, don't look at any of that material. I said, okay.
Too late.
Too late. So the driver came and he laughed and he says, I guess you got this in error, eh? And I said, yeah. And he said, no problem. And he took it and carried it away. So when they say, you know, the information fell off a truck,
Yeah,
it
actually
literally did in this case.
But your name was on it.
My
so
name was on it.
If they ever
And-
came back to you, like,
Yeah,
well, I didn't know.
I know.
Thought it was for me.
But it told me exactly where to set up, and I did.
Yeah,
I
it's
set
okay.
up. I set up a system in the Burlington Oakville area, and it was a dial-in system. Only I used Bell's Centric service, so it was all electronic. I didn't have any boxes like that you had to redial the number or anything.
Yeah.
It would just went into their system through what's called DISA, Direct Inward Station System Access, and you put in a code, and later on we just did it with caller ID.
Oh, okay.
You know. But that was the beginnings of it, and so I set it up, and then I was driving there every day, trying to get customers on it.
London to Oakville.
Well, yeah, London to Oakville, London to Burlington, right? And CRTC had not done a very good job of telling Canadians that competition had arrived.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't seem to want to spend the money in the ads or whatever. I don't know, like usual, right?
Yeah.
So everybody I went to thought that it was a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they said, you can't compete with Bell Canada. They have a monopoly. There's nobody else that sells phone service in Ontario. It's Bell Canada. Slam. You know, my face the door.
Yeah.
I got called every 4-letter word you can imagine.
The haters.
And I would call on the phone. People would slam the phone down and say, you know, don't call me. Where did you get my number from? I mean, I was just going through businesses in the phone book,
Yeah.
right? And don't call me again. And, you know, you can't compete with Bell. They have the monopoly. I don't like it, but, you know, we're stuck with it. And I said, but competition has just been allowed. No, it hasn't. Where does it say that? Well, it's been in the paper. Well, I never saw it. So I was there for a couple months, door to door, phone calls every day, and nothing worked.
Zero.
I couldn't get anybody. And I had managed to get an office in the basement of this old house, right just off the QE there, because the guy, he saw my ads, and he worked a deal with me. I gave him free service.
Oh, okay.
And in return for a place where I could have a phone to make phone calls and a place to kind of work out of, right? So he was my only customer, and he wasn't even a paying customer. He got free service, right?
Jeez.
So, and I think I almost caught pneumonia in that damp basement, right? So anyway, and your mom, you know, one day she opened up the Bell bill thinking it was our house phone, and it was like $800 because I had this whole Centric system ready to go. And she says, what is this? Is this a mistake? And I said, no, that's the phone system we have in Burlington. And she says, we can't pay that. How many customers do you have? And I said,
One.
well,
One non-paying one.
none. And she says, you have to disconnect that. And you know, you're taking food out of our son's mouth and diapers off his back. And you know, I felt horrible. And I had, you know, she's right. We don't have any money coming in from this. I had my systems in around London,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I didn't have a single customer there. So, and it was December, and I said, like she said, you know, you got to disconnect it right away. And I said, can you give me to the end of the month? And she put her hands on her hips. Okay, and, you know, went in the kitchen, wham, the door, you know.
Slam the door.
And I felt like this hot. You know, literally, I'm spending the family money,
Yeah.
and there's no money coming in.
No return.
And she was right. It wasn't right. I gotta either cook or get out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
She went back into the kitchen, right? And so I continued to go there day by day and nothing. And I was just feeling, now had this on my mind that if I don't get anything by the end of December, I promised her I gotta pull it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there goes my dream,
Gone.
right? Gone. And I thought, what do I do? So there's all this pressure, and I'm driving every day. And I remember listening to radio, listening to this talk show on AM. You know, it's all talk shows on AM sports these days, right?
Yeah. Podcast.
And there was this radio station from Fort Wayne, Indiana, WOW. It's one of these long-range stations, these clear channel stations, and it was fading in and out, and I could hear. And they were interviewing this very successful entrepreneur. And he says, we've been talking for the last hour, but for the benefit of anybody that's just phoned in or just tuned in, could you summarize what we've been talking about? And I thought, great, I just tuned in. I want to hear what this guy has to say.
Yeah.
You know, he says, you know, there's so many entrepreneurs and so many people in business, if they would just make one more phone call, knock on one more door, hang in there one more week, he says, I promise you things will break open for you. And I thought, I got to listen to this, right? And he says, you know, there's so many people with great ideas, but they just need to stick it out just a little bit longer. He said it's three things. He said it's believe in yourself, believe in your own ideas, but he says third, but most importantly, stick-to-itiveness. He says if, you know, all these would-be entrepreneurs and business people, if they would just stay at it a little bit longer, it will break open for them. So I pulled over and I wrote it down and I put it in my wallet. Those three things, right? Believe in yourself, believe in your own ideas, stick-to-itiveness. And I wrote it down, and when the going got tough, I would pull it out and I would read it.
Read it.
And I was like, that guy promised.
Yeah, he promised me.
And I kept going and nothing, Mark. It was so hard. I was almost in tears because this, you know, it was $29 a month for unlimited phone calls from Hamilton to Toronto area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's a hell of a deal. I mean, I knew that people were spending $400 and $500 a month on long distance, but I couldn't get anybody to take it. It's like, this is crazy. This is the best thing since sliced bread, but nobody even wants the knife to butter.
No one cares.
Nobody cares, you know? And so I was really, it was hard. And, you know, because of the pressure that, you know, I was under now with your mom, it was hard to pick up that 110-pound phone, right? And make calls, because it's like nobody wants to take it. And it's not like I'm not doing it. I was knocking on doors. I was making phone calls, but I just couldn't get anybody to take it. And then, you know, it was like the 15th of December, and I thought, oh my God, we're, you know, another few days, we're coming into Christmas holidays, and nobody's thinking business. Everybody's thinking presents and parties and all that. You know, I've got to do something shortly or it's game over. So all of a sudden I was driving to Hamilton the one day and the phone rang on my cell phone. And it was a cell phone at that time, but the ones you installed in your cars.
Yep.
It was an Novotel phone. And he says, hi, this is Wade Hemsworth from the Hamilton Spectator. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's this all about? And he said, I've been seeing your ads in the paper for this phone service. Is it a scam? And he laughed.
Yeah.
Is it a scam? And I thought, oh God, not another one. And I said, no, it's legitimate. And he says, well, can you tell me about it? And I explained all about the system and, you know, and it's about CRTC and competition. And now this is a legitimate business and it's competitive to Bell Canada. It's an alternative for long distance. And he says, well, how many customers do you have? And I thought, oh shit. And I thought, well, I said, well, I've got 300, and I was referring to the ones in the London area,
Yeah.
right? I wasn't telling a lie.
Yeah.
I had 0, well, 1,
Yeah.
my guy that I had to deal
The
with.
free guy.
I have 300, but that was my entire system,
Mhm.
right? 300 back in the London area. And he said, this is great. He said, this is the best thing since sliced bread. He says, do you mind if I write a story on it? I thought, oh, prayers have been answered.
Yeah. Free advertising.
Yeah, I thought, there is a God. There is a God in heaven.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's literally what I did. And he says, well, I said, where is it going to be? He says, it's going to be in the Burlington Today section. And he said, it's going to be on the front page of the Burlington Today section. So it's a pull-out section,
Yeah.
and it's the front. He says it'll be a quarter section with your picture. And I said, that's great. And I said, do you mind me asking, when's it going to come out? And he said, January 2nd. And I thought, oh, what do I do?
Made a promise.
I made a promise to your mom.
Yeah.
And I said, can't you have it come out a little bit sooner? And he says, no. He says, January 2nd issue, it's the weekend. He says it's like New Year's, the night after New Year's Day or whatever, and everybody's home with nothing to do.
Yeah.
He said, and the paper sits around, and he said, we put all the human interest stories in, and it's a bigger paper because, there's no internet. I mean, everybody just reads what's in front of them. They said people are sitting around, it's New Year's weekend,
Mhm.
drinking, watching the football games, partying, having, snacks and stuff, and they just read whatever's laying around.
It's the biggest paper of the
Yeah,
year.
he said it's the biggest paper of the year, literally. And he says people are interested in human interest stories. He said it's the end of the year, people review their life.
Mhm.
They want to make changes. They're in their job. Maybe I'm going to change my job. I'm going to do something different. He says people review their circumstances, and so we put all the human interest stories in about what else you could do with your life, what other businesses, ideas. He said it's great. And I said, okay. So then I went home and told your mom, and she thought I was lying through my teeth, making up this big cock and bull story. Right?
Yeah.
And I said, can you at least give me until the story comes out? And if there's nothing comes of it, I disconnect it. And again, hands on hips, goes in the kitchen,
Slams the
slow
door.
door slams. And and I thought, this better work out.
Hopefully.
So, January 2nd happened, and at 6:30 sharp, my cell phone started ringing. Never stopped.
Off the hook.
Never stopped. It rang, and people were on the phone, and they said, I want to sign up. And I said, well, can I tell you a bit about it? Nope. Just come over, get me set up, and I'll pay my check. They said, if Wade says this is good, I don't need to hear
I
anymore.
believe him.
Because Wade was one of these guys that would kind of review things.
Everyone trusted him.
Yeah, and everybody trusted him. He was a trustworthy writer.
Mhm.
So if he said something was good, that's all they needed
His
to hear.
stamp of approval
Stamp-
was gold.
Stamp of approval, yeah. So I went immediately to Hamilton and started signing people up that day, right?
Mhm.
And then your mom would clear my phone, right? And as fast as she could clear the calls, I mean, she'd write down the names, and she would just take orders.
Yeah.
And if people wanted more information, she would have me call them back. But literally, the phone voicemail, I think it held 15 or 20 calls or something, and it was filling up every few minutes.
Oh, jeez.
And literally, from that newspaper article, I signed up 300 people,
Wow.
right? And then it just took off on itself.
Snowballed.
All those people told their friends. Now, there's another side to this, and then they started learning telecom in that area, and it grew. 10 years later, I sold it for. People can search and see what the company
You
sold
Google
for.
it.
Google it, and you'll see what it sold for. And we had, how many customers did we have? We had 3,000 customers. All I know is we were bringing in close to $8 million a month, and it was $79 a month to call everywhere in Canada.
Wow.
So do the math on whatever that is, how many customers that was. We had 3 floors in an Oakville office building,
Mhm.
and we had 300 employees, and we were bringing in close to $8 million a month when I sold it. Started in '88, same
Sold
year
it in
your brother was born,
Yeah.
and sold it in '99.
Wow.
And I remember that when I sold it, we were signing up more, what did I say it was?
More people per hour?
More people, more customers per hour than I had in my very first year. You know, those 300 people.
Yeah.
That took a year to get them, and we were signing up those 300. We were signing up 300 people per hour. So it was more than 300 people per hour, more than I did in the whole first year.
Wow.
But the other side of the story, Mark, is interesting because at one point this guy managed to reach me, you know, to my desk because I was, you know, the owner and the CEO and everything, right? And calls were screened, and you know, call only came to me if it was super important. Somehow this guy got through to me, all upset. And the first thing I heard when I answered, he says, "You people with money." He said, "All you do is make more money, and us people who work hard and have ideas, we can't get anywhere in life. You take everything away from us." And I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "I had that idea and you stole it from me."
He stole it.
I said, "What are you talking about? I've known about this since I was a kid, about how you could call locally like this."
Yeah.
And he says, "You have money and you just make more money." And I said, "I got news for you, buddy." I said, "I started this with I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. I got a $10,000 new venture loan to start this business, to get the 10 call extenders from John Smith.
Yeah.
Right? They were $1,000 a piece,
Oof.
right? 800 plus tax or 900 plus tax.
Yeah.
And I said, I got a 10,000 new ventures loan, and I never got a single loan after that. And they said, "That's impossible." I said, "No, it's not impossible." I said, you know, to sign up each customer, I had a $50 deposit, and I took the first month and last month up front. So that was, at that time it was $69. Well, the very first system was just to call through to Oakville or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And that was $29. And then eventually it was $79 to call all over Canada, right? But the very first people, I did the $29 first and last, plus a $50 setup. And that was the money I used to finance the entire Telecom. I never got another loan again.
Wow.
In fact, we got a call, and that put him in his place. You know, this guy couldn't believe it, that you don't actually need money. You just need the idea and your passion.
Yeah,
Okay.
stick to it.
And yeah, and the money will come. And it did come. And I got a new $10,000 new venture loan, and there's even the story around that one.
Yeah.
And and you know what it sold for. But when I went to get that loan, Mark, I remember it was Royal Bank in Byron there. We had our place. And I showed him my idea, and he said, "Fill this out." And it was like a booklet where you had to do a whole business plan, and explained everything, how to do a business plan. And so I got the book, and I took the staples out, and I put each page in the manual typewriter, right? And I typed up the whole thing, made it nice and neat. I didn't want to write it out because I wanted it to be very nice and neat and professional to go back to the manager with. And it took me a week to do the whole business plan at the time. This was for my sharing group. This was to get the money just to get those line extenders, right?
Yeah.
And because I rented them from him at one point, and then he made me buy them. He says, "You can't rent them.
Okay.
There's too many." And so I went in to get the loan, and the manager said, you know, "Fill this out." And I came back a week, and I handed it to him. I says, "I filled it all out for you." And he looks at it like this, and he just kind of breezes through it, opens his drawer, and throws it in there.
Slaps it in there.
I was pissed off. I was so upset. I thought, well, obviously I didn't get the loan, so I was sarcastic to him. And I said, "Aren't you gonna at least read through it?" Right, very sarcastically, in that kind of a tone. And he says, "Rob, relax, cool your jets. You got the loan." And now I got egg on my face, right? I felt like about that high.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you weren't interested." And he says, "No." I said, but now I'm in a better tone with him, very happy. And I said, "But why didn't you look through the booklet?" He says, "I don't need to." He says, "Most people I give the book to never come back." He says, "You're very passionate about this idea." He says, "You took a whole week to fill it out very carefully." He says, "No problem. I know you're going to repay the loan.
No one even
I'm not worrying about
finishes
you."
it. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, nobody ever comes back. You did, and you took the time. You believe in what you're doing. I'm going to give you the loan. Come with me. And he took me over to the counter, and he said to the cashier, the teller, he says, give Rob a loan for $10,000.
There you go.
And I walked out with $10,000. So, and I never got another loan. And you know what the company, you saw what the company sold for. You know, and when I sold the company, of course, you know, we built this property. That's how this house is here. That's how this farm is here. You know?
And then you knew when to sell too, right?
Yeah, people said, when are you going to sell the company? And I always said, when there's another company copying our plan, that's when I'll sell it. And I don't know if you remember when we went up to the Yukon for a summer holiday with the Churas.
Road trip.
And, you know, they had their two young girls the same age as you guys, and we had a fantastic trip, and I had that old satellite phone. It was like a suitcase that weighed about 20 pounds. I remember when we were at the airport and it fell out the back and fell right on my foot. I just broke my foot. And, you know, I had to pay like a $2,000 deposit for that phone because it was worth like $10,000. This is one of the original satellite phones. And I was so worried that when it fell out, it broke, right? When I tested it. But when we were there for about 3 weeks with the two motorhomes going around the Yukon. It was a great holiday. You know, the gold panning and the fishing and the desert up there. And,
everything.
You know, the old mining town. It was a great holiday. And I would either call in on the satellite phone every couple of days, or if there was a pay phone at a gas station, I would call in, right?
It's like in the movies.
Yeah, and there was no messages on my phone because everybody was looking after everything while I was gone, right? And the one day I called in, there were 5 messages on my phone, all within a few minutes of each other. And like I went to the next message, and it was literally, you know, minute later, and then seconds later, and I thought, uh-oh. So then I listened to each message, and the message was, what was the name of the company? I don't even remember the name. It'll come to me in a minute. But it was another competitor. Instead of $69 a month, it was $29 a month to call anywhere in Canada, unlimited.
Wow.
And I thought, my God, how can they do that? Our cost alone is something like $40 through Bell. How can they're selling below cost.
Undercutting it.
Yeah, how can they do that? And literally we started hemorrhaging. Like all the customers were running from our company. I think we lost, 15 or 20,000 customers. I think we had 100,000 customers. Does that sound right? I don't even remember. This is a long time ago now. But we lost a lot of customers and we got into the red very fast. And so we had to do a lot of cutting and a lot of heavy duty marketing and a lot of stuff to get ourselves in the black. But I knew right then and there it was time to sell. And so we contacted PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they contacted Bell because we got all our underlying services from Bell. And they said, yes, we would be interested in buying you. Yes, absolutely. They went to the CRTC, who said no.
Nope.
He said the whole idea of this competition is to have competition, not to have you swallow them back up again.
Yeah.
So they said no. Anybody but Bell can buy London Telecom, but not you guys. So they called us back very disappointed, and they said we would have offered you a very good price also. We couldn't sell to Bell. So we approached other companies, and nobody seemed to be interested and we got ourselves back in the black. And there's another little story here too. My accountant lady, she thought we were going to go under, and she wanted me to go get a loan, and I knew we wouldn't get a loan, right? I went to Royal Bank, she wanted me to get like a $500,000 loan or something, and she says, Rob, we're going to go under, and I said, no, we won't. And we went through all areas of the company and hired an auditor, and we kind of got very efficient at everything we did, and we got the hemorrhaging right down to the point where we're breaking even. But I didn't get the loan. We just tightened up our belt, right? But it's funny because a few years after that, I won Entrepreneur of the Year award at this big dinner where the Premier of Ontario was. I got to shake his hand, and he handed me an award and all this stuff. And it was funny because the top guys from the 5 different banks came up to me. And they says, how much money do you want? And And I
What do
said,
you
you
need?
just name what you want and it's yours.
We'll give it to you.
Yeah, they all came up to me and they said, just tell us, what do you need, 5 million, 10 million? Just say.
Yeah.
And I said, no, thank you.
We're good.
You were good.
Yeah.
It's funny because, when I really needed them,
They were out there.
Royal Bank came through at the very beginning with the $10,000 loan, but,
Yeah.
when we really needed them,
No
they said
one.
no. They wouldn't give us a
A
loan
few.
because they could see we were in the red, right?
Yeah.
But when I won the award, they had no problem. They wanted to stuff millions into my pocket.
Jeez.
Anyway, no, but I still appreciated Royal Bank at the very beginning, and I'm still with Royal Bank these days, and I have a very good relationship.
Probably their
with them.
longest customer.
Yeah. We were Bell's biggest customer for taking all the underlying services under wholesale level.
Wow.
Yeah, they treated us very, very well. We were their biggest customer and their biggest competitor also.
Wow.
But we did sell the company to Primus Canada, and the rest is history.
And then one last thing, you said you could have bought it back.
Yeah, so there's a little more to the story
Buy
here.
it
So
back. Yeah.
my top guys had earned into the company. I took 15% of the ownership of the company and let my top guys earn into that. So I owned 85% of the company. I owned 100% originally, and then we did a deal where, through bonuses and through, they earned into it, meaning if you reach certain goals, you got ownership into the company. It was 15%. We made our deal with Primus for all cash, right? And there was a, deposit, and then on closing it was all cash. And I was good with that, I remember we made our deal and so on. And two things happened. PricewaterhouseCoopers told me that being, that they're affiliated with an American company, got nothing against Americans, I got lots of great American friends. I'm always down there in the States, but they said the way they do business is a little bit different than in Canada. They're more aggressive. There's some dirty tricks. He said, we're totally familiar with these and we'll keep you whole, don't worry. But what they will do is just before closing, they will come up with some reason why, if we don't agree to this, they're going to walk away. Be aware of that. And sure enough, it happened. Just days before closing, they said, we've found some irregularities here and we'd like to knock the purchase price down by about $3 million. I said, no.
Nope.
I said, I said, they've had ample time to go through everything. And whether there's irregularities or not, or bad accounting or mistakes or whatever, when you deal with that many customers, there can be some things, right? But it all comes out in the audit. It all comes out when they do the due diligence, okay? I said, you guys had ample time. It's right in the deal. You had to this date to come with us with anything which is not jiving. The numbers aren't exactly working, and we can make an adjustment on purchase price. And they never did. They came to us just before closing.
Of course.
And what they were saying was legitimate, but I wasn't bending. I said no. And my guy said, Rob, we're going to lose the deal. I said, I don't care. I said, we already, the five of us, when we were selling the company, we wrote down what we thought the company was worth. And we were all around the same number. And we sold the company for a little bit less than that. But we were satisfied. Okay, you never get what you really want.
Yeah.
It's the same in real estate selling a house. Vendors are vendors, buyers are buyers. Somewhere you gotta meet partway, right? And you're never gonna be entirely happy, but you're satisfied. Okay, I'm okay with this. And we were okay with the deal. So when they came and wanted to bend us further, I dug my heels in and I said, no, we can lose the deal, I don't care. So the deal did close, but before it closed, on this, I think it was the second last day, Mark.
They came back to
They
you again.
came back and they offered another deal. And they said, if you take shares back in our company, we'll give you 50% more for the company. So
sketchy.
instead of, let's just say $100 for the company,
Yeah.
obviously it's a lot more than that, we'll give you $150. Now, but it's all shares. And once again, I said no. And they said, why not? Are you crazy? It's like you're getting 50% more. And I said, no, I'm not getting 50% more. This is shares. This is all on paper. We've made a deal on the cash price, and that's what I'm going with, period. And my guys came to me, who, you know, my top guys, and they said, Rob, we get 50% more. And I said, no. I said, this is all just on paper. It's all shares. Anything could happen. I said, if we do that, we're going to have to, our noses are going to be black from in the paper every day, watching share prices and all this. We won't even be in control. These guys will be in control, and it'll be up to them whether we actually make any money or not. I'm not going to do that.
And there's a period where you have to keep those shares.
Yes,
too,
there
right?
is. There is. I wouldn't be able to sell for probably 3 months, you know, because insider trading and, you know what's going on. So you're a big block of the shares, so you just can't trade them.
Yeah.
They're locked. Everybody else can, but you know. So I said no, and our guys, you know, their chins were down to their feet. It's like, you know, well, easy for you. You're getting 85% of all this, but for us, we're only 15%, and it's much more meaningful for us to get 50% more. Like if each individual guy was getting, let's say, $1 million, they'd now be getting $1.5 million. So when you're talking $1 million, that's meaningful, right? If you're talking many millions, they're right. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's all good. So the day that the sale closed, we got our money, got our big checks, certified checks, and put them in the bank and paid the big taxes, you know, and all that. And I took, you know, a chunk and started the Freeman Foundation, Rob Freeman Foundation also. And the guys were quick to point out that, look at what the shares did. Like when we sold the company, the shares traded at $55 on closing, right, of Primus. And right away on closing, they jumped to $65. So that's how much percent more? That's like 15% more or something, 10%, whatever. And everybody was quick to point out, like, Rob, look.
But you can't touch them anyway.
No, I said that's all just paper profit. It doesn't mean anything. And well, it's like, well, you know. And I did watch the share value a little bit. And, you know, on closing, they went from 55 Primus to 65. But then they started going down, okay? And on Y2K day, because we sold it in 99, I think year 2000 was Y2K, right? I remember there was all the trouble with, they thought computers would have were crashed. There wasn't much that happened. But anyway, by Y2K day, I happened to check, and they had dropped down to 25 cents or 24 cents.
From $65 to
65
cents a
25
share.
cents. And, you know, I got a call from some of my guys, aren't you glad we didn't do the share deal?
Yeah, aren't you glad?
Yeah, I know. I didn't rub it in, but
yeah.
I knew, you know. But they dropped down to 24 cents, and they never went above $1 after that.
Jesus.
Never. So if we had done the share deal, the company would have been basically worthless.
You all would have been screwed.
Yeah, we would have been all screwed.
All that work for nothing.
And other companies did do those deals with companies.
And they got screwed.
They got nothing. We heard all the horror stories.
Yeah.
So, you know, people said to me, how did you know how to do all these things right? Well, we did make a lot of mistakes, but, you know, when you are involved in something to this degree, your ear is to the ground and you can sense it. You can feel it. Because even when I made decisions, people would say, my own guys would say, give me a reason why we're doing that. And I would say, I don't have a reason. I said, I just feel it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I said, for me, it feels right. And that's what I said about the shares. Like, it felt right to let Primus walk when the first time, a few days before closing, they tried to reduce the price on some irregularities. I said it didn't feel right to reduce the price. It felt right to just say, take it or leave it.
Don't get greedy.
Yeah, don't get greedy. And yeah, when they wanted to do the whole share thing, and it's like, you know, in the stock market, bears make money, bulls make money, pigs make none. You get greedy, you get nothing. We were happy with the deal. We were satisfied with the deal. And I didn't need to get all this extra money in terms of shares, potentially. because I really didn't believe it was going to happen anyway.
Mhm.
I really didn't, Mark. I felt I'm happy with the cash. Cash is king. It's mine. If they want to burn the company down after, that's their business.
Yeah,
And
so
they
there's-
literally did.
Wow.
They literally did. Like,
Destroyed it.
well, you know what happened was they filed for bankruptcy, a reorganization. They
Primus
did.
did.
Yeah, and they did
Yeah.
reorganize, and they're doing okay today. But
Mm.
is when their shares went down to 24 cents, right?
Jeez.
And yeah, so you know, I mean, if we had kept the shares, then we would still be involved. And I said to the guys, then we might as well just keep the company, right? We might as well just keep it. And no, if we're gonna sell it, we sell it for cash. Cash is king. It's done. I can walk away.
Cut all ties.
Yeah. Now, and there was one more thing that I did too. When we were making the deal, you know, we had all our employees. And the first 100, I knew everybody by name. I knew their birthdays, and I would call them on their birthdays and all that. And after that, I had to stop doing it. It was just too much for me. But we were like a family.
Mm.
We were close-knit. People were really trying to get into London Telecom to work there. And you know, it was hard to get in because people were not leaving the company. They liked their jobs.
Just stayed.
We had profit sharing. And, you know, not too many people got fired, but if you left the company, there had to be something really wrong, right? Because nobody wanted to leave London Tel.
Mm.
It was a good company. And I remember even Angus Reid Telemanagement, they wrote about us, and they said, London Telecom's a nicely run little company that takes care of its customers.
Mm.
You know, so it was a good company. And, you know, we had profit sharing there. And when I made the deal with Primus, I was sad that I knew they would consolidate, and I knew they'd get rid of all our people,
Yeah.
and I didn't want that to happen. I thought our people have to have time to find another job. I know they'll keep some people, but they're consolidating two companies.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you do that?
Delete everyone. Yeah.
You just keep what you need, and you keep the business, but you get rid of all the extra people, right?
Yeah.
So I said to them in the deal, I want you to guarantee in writing that everybody gets to keep their job for 1 year. Oh, they were livid.
They're pissed.
They were pissed. They said, you can't tell us what to do once we have the company. I said, well, don't buy the company then.
Yeah, I'll keep
I
it.
said, this is the deal. I said, these people are loyal people that, you know, worked hard for the company, and I'm not about to just sell the company, get all the money, and leave them high and dry. No way. You know, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. That's the deal, take it or leave it. So they begrudgingly signed the deal, right? Well, you know, after a year, they got rid of most of the people. There's a handful of people that are still there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that they kept. But during that 1 year period, everybody had time to go and find other jobs.
Well,
You know, I was happy about that. So I think that's the whole story, Mark.
yeah, wow, that was a long one. Well, do you have any words of wisdom before we wrap up here?
You know, I would tell people who don't like their jobs, you know, look at the kinds of things you did when you were younger. Look at the kinds of things you enjoy and see if there's something around that you could do. Mark, I remember you did that video.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that video from that philosopher guy?
Oh yeah, the motivational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the story about that.
Basically, I've been filming for a while now, racing and, you know, kind of traveling. So I took all my GoPro footage, and I took it was an Alan Watts speech, and it was kind of like a motivational speech where, you know, don't chase the money, chase like your dream and chase the passion.
And the money will come.
The money will follow, right?
It may not be millions, but it'll be enough
Exactly.
to keep you, enough to go on
'Cause
holidays.
if you chase the money your whole life, you're never gonna be happy.
Yeah.
Right. So, and
Where
and
can people find that video?
it's on YouTube. I believe it's called GoPro Enjoy Your Life or something.
Yeah, I love that video.
But
Mark.
yeah, it ended up going through the GoPro office. The whole office at GoPro watched it, and then later, a couple years later, I was actually featured in their book. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. But yeah, I've always just found like stick with it. You know, find that niche that you want, and just when you're ready to quit, don't. And eventually things will come to you, and it gets easier. And,
Look at all the stories around you.
Oh, I
Mark.
had hundreds of stories where I was ready to give up, and you know, I waited one more week like you did, and yeah, things just worked and it came, right? You know, even these past 2 years with everything that's going on, like there's times I wanted to quit and I had to get another job, and then I got let go from that job, and I was so pissed off at those people. But then I had a bigger opportunity come to me
Just meant there was something better.
within a month, and it made that job look like frickin' marbles. Like,
Yeah.
and so now I'm kind of just laughing about it. But yeah, even Laura told me, it's like, just stick with it, and like something will happen, right? You've done so much good for everyone that like it's got to come back to you.
Yeah, and it did.
So I just stuck with it. I'm not quitting.
Well, I remember all the stories about the haters at the beginning.
Oh, the
Mark,
haters,
and
yeah.
you came into, I was in my office and you had tears in your eyes because people were making. You were just a young guy. How old were you?
I was 18.
Yeah, and they were making nasty comments, and but then we discovered that love your haters because they push your views up.
Yeah, they push everything up and they motivate you.
Yeah, and let the other people respond to the haters. You don't have to respond to them.
Yeah, everyone else does the work. So thank you to everyone that does the work for me.
That jumps in and defends Mark.
Defends me, leaves the nice comments for the haters.
Because the more comments on a YouTube video, it pushes that video up in the algorithm.
Comments, likes, watch, and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, so embrace your haters. You'll never get rid of them anyway.
Yeah.
But I guess you asked me, words of wisdom. I followed my passion. I never ever looked at the money.
Mm-hmm.
I had all the people hired that did, to make sure that bills were paid and to make sure that we could run it efficiently. But I actually followed what I love doing. And I worked at Bell Canada at the beginning to do all the networking and all that stuff, and then eventually I hired guys. And it's funny because in the end we had a network department of like 15 guys and gals, and I can't tell you how many times when there was a problem in the network, guess who it was that found it? It was me. And I would find it inadvertently, right?
Wow.
Like dialing, I would just happen to dial somebody in a different city and the call didn't go through, and then I was the one that put the trouble call into our network, and they said, nobody's even reported that yet. And it was strange because it would always be me, and the guys were so embarrassed that they didn't even know that the problem existed in the network.
Yeah.
And how come the owner, Rob,
Is
had to be
finding
the
them
one to bring the trouble report to the network?
Yeah.
And it's like, and they would give the other guys crap, and they'd say, look, we have to be on top of this and find it before the owner does.
Yeah.
But it would always be me finding it.
Exactly.
But it was
Funny how life works.
so follow your passion and truly do what you want to do, and however humble that is. And if you watch that video that Mark did with Alan Watts, he describes it, and that's one of my favorite videos because he does say, you may not in the end be a millionaire, but you're going to be looked after.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be looked after. You'll get the money you need for your house, for your trips, for your car, for the kids' education, all these things. But follow your dream and follow the things that you want to do. And Mark, that's exactly what you're doing.
Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Dad, for telling everyone the story.
You're welcome.
I'm sure a lot of you kind of watched it all the way through, but we'll definitely have to do this again and explain other stuff. So thank you. We'll see you later.